The year is 2025, and the air in Seattle tasted perpetually of damp concrete and ambition. For me, Emily Hayes at 32, it tasted mostly of obligation. I was a designer, a damn good one if I was allowed to say so myself. But in the gilded cage of the Sterling family, I was merely the accessory Nathan, my successful lawyer husband, had picked up along the way. The Sterlings were old money, the kind that didn't just own houses. They owned views, opinions, and often the quiet deference of those around them. Nathan, bless his ambitious heart, had married into that legacy, and 4 years in, I was still trying to prove I was more than just a pretty face with a good eye for fabric texture. We had Lily, our 18-month-old daughter, a tiny, vibrant splash of chaos in our otherwise meticulously curated life. Lily was my anchor, the only thing that felt genuinely Times mine, Times in that mausoleum of expensive taste they called a home. The pressure, however, was relentless, personified most sharply by Claire Sterling, Nathan's older sister. Claire was porcelain perfection, crisp suits, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, and a gaze that could freeze a freshly poured martini. She viewed me as an interloper, a modern working-class stain on their patrician pedigree. The breaking point arrived predictably at the 60-year birthday bash for Richard Sterling, patriarch extraordinaire. The party was held at their sprawling estate overlooking Lake Washington, a fortress of granite and entitlement. I had spent 2 weeks agonizing over the floral arrangements and lighting to ensure the ambiance wasn't times 2 times stuffy, only to find myself seated at the periphery of the family table feeling like an exhibit under glass. It was right after the lobster bisque, when the champagne had loosened the usual Sterling guardrails, that Claire struck. She leaned across the table, a predatory smile playing on her lips, addressing Richard, but aiming the poison directly at me. "Father, you look magnificent. Just magnificent," she purred. Then her voice dropped just enough to carry to our corner. "Though looking at little Lily, I must say she's a real puzzle. She's got your mother's nose, father, and Nathan's chin. But Emily, well, perhaps Emily has some secrets she hasn't shared with us." The implication hung thick and sickening in the air. Infidelity, doubt cast on my motherhood. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the reflex to shrink, to apologize for existing. But this time, something snapped. I looked at Nathan, expecting the shield he so rarely provided, but which I desperately needed in that moment. Nathan didn't defend me. He didn't even offer a lukewarm chuckle. He threw his head back and laughed, a booming, genuinely amused sound that echoed around the hushed room. "Wouldn't surprise me, Claire," he said, wiping a tear from his eye. "Who knows? Maybe Lily belongs to the pool boy. Stranger things have happened in this family, right?" The laughter roared. It wasn't just polite tittering. It was the sound of the elite, confirming their shared cruel joke. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't just the public humiliation. It was the realization that Nathan didn't just times doubt times me. He was actively, publicly times mocking times the potential betrayal. In that instant, the foundation of our marriage, the trust I had so carefully tried to rebuild after every slight, crumbled into dust. I excused myself, muttering something about needing fresh air. I walked onto the veranda, the glittering lights of Seattle seeming miles away, and breathed deeply. The anger wasn't a wave. It was an internal combustion engine firing up. The public joke was merely the tip of a very sharp, submerged iceberg. Over the next few days, I tried to resume my normal life, juggling client meetings and Lily's nap schedule, but the sting of Nathan's laughter kept bleeding through. I found myself scrolling through old emails, searching for some flicker of defense, some proof that he cherished me. Instead, I found a horrifying trail. It started subtly. A large, highly lucrative contract for designing the new headquarters of a major tech firm, a career-making job, had vanished. The client cited concerns regarding the stability and professional integrity of my firm. I was blindsided. My reputation was everything. Digging deeper into my professional correspondence, I found emails that shouldn't have existed, anonymous messages, sent to my most conservative clients, thinly veiled insinuations that I was using client funds for personal gain, or worse, that my designs were plagiarized. These messages were slick, sophisticated, and eerily timed. Then came the devastating discovery. Nathan had been working late, always late. One Tuesday night, while searching for a missing tax document on his laptop, a task he'd entrusted to me, Ironically, I stumbled across a folder hidden deep within his encrypted professional drive. It wasn't labeled divorce prep or financials. It was labeled Times Hayes Surveillance Asterisk. My hands trembled so violently I almost dropped the trackpad. Inside were invoices, reports, and detailed logs from a private investigation firm operating out of a discreet office near Pioneer Square. The surveillance had been ongoing for 6 months. 6 months of tracking my movements, my meetings, my coffee runs with friends. He hadn't just doubted me. He had been building a case against me all while sleeping beside me. The final invoice was dated just 3 days before his father's birthday party. He was preparing the ground for the joke. The pain of the DNA comment was sharp, immediate. The discovery of the private detective was slow-acting poison, corroding everything I thought we shared. He hadn't just failed to trust me. He had actively conspired against my character and my career. I closed the laptop, the sterile glow reflecting in my wide, suddenly cold eyes. I was done being the fragile wife, the designer they tolerated. They wanted drama. They wanted secrets and destruction. Fine. They would get a masterclass in strategic demolition delivered by the one person they never thought capable of fighting back. My revenge would not be shouted in a boardroom or sobbed into a therapist's couch. It would be meticulous, undeniable, and deployed exactly where it would cause the maximum systemic collapse. First, the truth about Lily. That was non-negotiable. I knew I couldn't trust Nathan with a simple request for a paternity test. He would either destroy the evidence or use the results as a weapon of delayed control. I needed irrefutable, untainted proof. The following Thursday, I waited until 3 a.m. Nathan was out late, likely reviewing case files, the perfect alibi for a Sterling. Lily slept soundly in her crib, clutching a worn teddy bear. I moved like a shadow through the sterile house. I needed 2 samples, one from Nathan, one from Lily. Nathan's toothbrush was easy. A quick swipe from the handle, a tiny transfer onto a sterile swab I'd ordered online and had discreetly shipped to a P.O. box across town. Lily was harder. I didn't want to wake her. I gently lifted a single strand of her fine dark hair, the same color as mine, frustratingly, from the pile of discarded hair she'd shed onto her pillow. I sealed both samples in labeled sterile envelopes. The next morning, I drove south, avoiding all major highways heading towards Portland. I used my design consultation business as a cover story, telling Nathan I was meeting a high-end supplier. I visited GeneSure Dynamics, a boutique highly reputable genetics lab known for its stringent confidentiality protocols. I presented my case as a complex medical necessity, paying upfront in cash to ensure no digital trail linked back to the Sterling's financial sphere. "We need full paternity confirmation," I told the technician, keeping my voice steady. "No results released without my explicit notarized authorization." The technician, professional and detached, nodded, bagging the samples. "The preliminary analysis takes 72 hours, Miss Hayes. The final confirmation about a week." 72 hours of agonizing silence stretched before me. I returned to Seattle, playing the role of the dutiful, slightly preoccupied wife, meticulously planning the next phase, while the DNA sat in a temperature-controlled vault. During that agonizing wait, the second part of the puzzle clicked into place. Claire. She hadn't just been whispering about me. She had been actively sabotaging my career. I knew Claire was digitally meticulous, but she was also arrogant. She relied on her perceived untouchability. I needed eyes on her digital life, and for that I needed an expert. I reached out to an old acquaintance from college, a coding prodigy named Alex, who now operated under the semi-legitimate banner of digital security consultation. He owed me a favor. I'd once redesigned his entire server room aesthetic, making his chaotic workspace actually functional. "I need into Claire Sterling's private life," Alex averred. Messaged him late one night. Deep dive. Social media backups, everything she thinks is hidden. Alex responded almost instantly with a single laconic word, "Times, pricey, asterisk." "I'll pay double what you usually charge," I replied. "And it needs to be untraceable. I need proof of intent." Alex got to work. He bypassed firewalls that would have stopped a team of government agents, not because he was better than them, but because he understood the psychology of overconfidence. 2 days later, while I was still staring blankly at Lily's nursery wall, waiting for the DNA results, Alex sent me a protected flash drive. She's an open book, his message read. The arrogance is staggering. I found a chain of encrypted chats where she brags about tanking your TechCorp bid. She actually used the term weeding out the undesirables. I plugged the drive into my old non-networked laptop, the one Nathan never knew about. I scrolled through screenshots, Claire, detailing how she spoofed an email from my supposed supplier to give false inventory numbers, thereby making my presentation look amateurish. She admitted to sending the anonymous warnings to my high-net-worth clients, driven by what she explicitly called pure, unadulterated sibling envy masquerading as protection. She hated that Nathan was happy with someone who times earned times her success. My anger morphed into a cold, crystalline focus. I was no longer reacting to slights. I was executing a calculated counterstrike. The paternity results arrived the next morning. I picked them up from a neutral locker facility, my heart slamming against my ribs. I opened the official stamped documents. Asterisk, asterisk, exclusion. Probability, 0%, asterisk, 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 inclusion. Probability, Nathan Sterling, as father, 99.99%, asterisk, asterisk. Lily was Nathan's daughter. Every single cell in her being screamed Nathan's lineage. The doubt, the mockery, the surveillance, it was all built on nothing but Claire's toxic jealousy and Nathan's gutless willingness to believe the worst about the woman who loved him. I looked at the pristine report. This was not just the nail in the coffin for their suspicions. It was the explosive charge for the entire Sterling dynasty's carefully curated facade. I didn't need a secret confrontation in a lawyer's office. I needed an audience. I needed the theater of their social world to become the stage of their downfall. The perfect venue presented itself 2 weeks later, the Sterling Annual Charity Gala. It was their pinnacle event held at the Seattle Art Museum, drawing every significant player in the Pacific Northwest's finance, legal, and philanthropic circles. It was where Claire, as Nathan's closest confidant, was scheduled to give the keynote address, thanking the donors and celebrating the enduring legacy of the Sterling family. The revenge needed to be public, undeniable, and delivered just as Claire was about to ascend to her moment of perceived glory. The week leading up to the gala was a blur of procurement and preparation. Alex was indispensable. He not only ensured the data was compressed perfectly for projection, but also developed a secure override for the museum's audiovisual system, making sure my presentation wouldn't be cut short by a nervous A divided by VTech. I wore a dress that was structurally beautiful but deceptively simple, a deep emerald silk that didn't scream for attention but demanded it once I moved. I ensured the DNA report, laminated and officially sealed, was tucked into my clutch. When we arrived, the atmosphere was thick with polite self-congratulation. Lily was at home with my mother. I wasn't subjecting her to this spectacle. Nathan was tense, radiating the uneasy energy of a man who suspects something is wrong but can't pinpoint the threat. "You're quiet tonight, Em," he murmured, as we navigated the throng of black ties. "Just soaking it all in, Nathan," I replied, offering him a cool practice smile. "It's quite a legacy you're all building." The evening progressed with excruciating slowness. Canapés were passed. Speeches extolled the virtues of philanthropy. Finally, the moment arrived. Richard Sterling tapped his glass. "And now to thank you all for your generosity, and to speak on behalf of the Sterling family, my brilliant daughter, Claire." Claire glided to the podium. She looked flawless, radiating the smug superiority of someone who knows she holds all the cards. She started her speech smoothly, praising her father's vision, thanking her mother for her grace, and offering a clipped obligatory nod toward Nathan and myself. And to my dear brother Nathan and his lovely wife Emily, she paused, delivering the line with a saccharine edge. "We look forward to many more years of shared success and the continuation of our strong family values." This was my cue. I didn't wait for the polite applause to die down. I walked toward the stage with deliberate, measured steps, my heels clicking sharply on the polished marble floor. I stopped just beside the podium, not pushing Claire aside, but simply standing there, an undeniable presence in the spotlight. "If I may, Claire," I said, my voice amplified by the microphone she was holding. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the room with the clarity of crystal. Claire glared at me, visibly recoiling. "Emily, this is hardly the time for an impromptu designer review. It's not about design, Claire, I said, my eyes locking onto the sea of faces, clients, competitors, and Nathan's partners. It's about foundations. And the foundations of this family, I'm afraid, are built on sand and malicious gossip. A hush fell over the room, the kind of absolute silence that precedes a catastrophic failure. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the laminated DNA report, holding it up so the stage lights caught the official seals. Before I say anything else, I want to address the comments made at Nathan's father's birthday. I announced, my voice gaining strength. I'm holding the certified genetic report for my daughter Lily. I had it tested against Nathan. The probability that Nathan Sterling is Lily's biological father is asterisk, 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 99.99% asterisk, asterisk. The collective intake of breath in the room was audible. Nathan, standing near the stage, looked like he'd been struck by lightning. His face was ashen. Claire recovered, first attempting to dismiss it, with an air of practiced control. Emily, this is outrageous melodrama. You bring laboratory reports to a charity gala. Nathan, control your wife. Nathan opened his mouth, trying to step forward, but I cut him off again smoothly, turning my attention to the massive projection screen behind the stage, which was currently displaying the Sterling family crest. Oh, I wouldn't dream of controlling her, Nathan. I continued, looking directly at him, now letting him see the years of suppressed hurt flash in my eyes. Because the real melodrama isn't about paternity, it's about sabotage. I nodded to Alex, who was waiting backstage. Suddenly, the Sterling crest vanished, replaced by a crisp, encrypted chat log. This, I stated, pointing to the screen, is evidence secured from Claire Sterling's private messaging account. Claire, you told your friends that you felt I was unworthy. You were jealous of the happiness you couldn't manufacture for your own life, so you decided to destroy mine. The messages scrolled across the screen in excruciating detail. Asterisk, Claire, I just sent the anonymous tip to TechCorp's VP. Watch her contract evaporate. Asterisk, asterisk, Claire. Honestly, Emily's designs are cheap theatrics. I'm protecting Nathan's standing. Asterisk, asterisk. Claire can't believe Nathan lets that woman breathe the same air we do. He's blinded by her looks. Asterisk. The room erupted not in laughter, but in horrified murmurs. These were the people whose businesses I wanted to secure, whose reputations I needed to respect. And they were watching in real time the absolute destruction of a Sterling's reputation. I turned back to the microphone, my voice softening only slightly, carrying the weight of finality. For 6 months, Nathan suspected my fidelity, encouraged by the poison spread by his sister, and he hired a private investigator to track me. He chose doubt over dialogue. Claire chose malicious destruction over basic human decency. I am not a victim of circumstance. I am the architect of accountability. I paused, letting the weight of the accusation settle. I didn't yell. I simply stated facts with the undeniable precision of a blueprint. I do not require the validation of this room, nor do I need the Sterling family's approval to validate my worth as a mother or a professional. But I will not raise my daughter in a house built on calculated lies and toxic suspicion. I placed the DNA report gently on the podium next to Claire's abandoned notes. Consider this my resignation from the role of the perfect daughter-in-law. I turned and walked off the stage. The silence followed me, a deep vacuum. As I passed Nathan, his face was a mask of paralyzed shock, his career suddenly looking very fragile under the unforgiving scrutiny of his peers. I didn't look back at Claire, but I heard her. A choked, pathetic sound of desperation followed by the furious whispered command, "Margaret, do something." Margaret Sterling, Nathan's mother, wasn't looking at Claire. She was staring at the screen where the last damning message was displayed, a message where Claire called Margaret's beloved grandchildren unfortunate liabilities. Margaret slowly brought a perfectly manicured hand to her face and began to sob, loud, ungraceful, utterly ruined sobs. The matriarch had seen the truth about her favored child. I walked out of the museum and hailed a cab the cold Seattle night, suddenly feeling exhilaratingly crisp. I wasn't just free. I was powerful. The aftermath was swift and brutal, precisely as engineered. The Sterling machine, so adept at crushing outsiders, proved utterly incapable of defending itself against an internal implosion of verifiable truth. Claire Sterling became radioactive. The powerful women in her philanthropic circles, the very women who held the purse strings for local charities, found her sudden desperation for an apology quite pathetic. She was quietly but firmly excised from every board and committee she controlled. Her attempts to frame it as a misunderstanding regarding family dynamics were met with curt rejections and icy stares. She was tainted by the evidence of her own maliciousness. Nathan's situation was more complex. For a high-powered defense attorney, the optics of spying on his own wife, especially when the surveillance was initiated based on slanderous gossip, was a severe ethical breach. His senior partners were not amused. The whispers in the legal community weren't about his skill. They were about his paranoia and lack of judgment. He faced internal review and, more damningly, he lost a key client who stated plainly, "If he can't trust his own wife, how can I trust him with trade secrets?" He came home 2 days after the gala, not with anger, but with a hollowed-out exhaustion. "Emily, we need to talk about this professionally," he managed, gesturing vaguely at the wreckage. "We times our times talking about it professionally," Nathan I countered, leaning against the pristine white kitchen island that once symbolized my failure to belong. "This is my professional exit strategy. I am filing for sole custody, and I expect you to engage in mandatory marital counseling if you ever want to discuss visitation outside of a courtroom." "Counseling? You humiliated me?" he exclaimed, the old entitled spark briefly flickering. "You paid a private investigator to build a dossier against the mother of your child because you preferred the comfort of suspicion over the inconvenience of trust. You laughed when your sister questioned my fidelity." "I didn't humiliate you, Nathan. I simply exposed the structural weakness of the pedestal you put yourself on." He tried to argue, but the fight had gone out of him. He knew deep down that his passive acceptance of his sister's cruelty had been the unforgivable sin. "I didn't stay to watch the full collapse of the sterling name. That wasn't my style. I wasn't interested in the long, slow grind of watching Claire wilt or Nathan apologize to empty rooms. My focus was singular, reclaiming my own life and ensuring Lily had a future free of their toxicity. I took the settlement money, a significant chunk negotiated swiftly. When Nathan realized I would happily present the entirety of Claire's chat logs to the Bar Association if he fought me, and I moved out of the Lake Washington prison. I found a beautiful, sun-drenched loft space in Capitol Hill. It was smaller, louder, and infinitely more authentic than the sterile mansion. I hired an excellent lawyer specializing in family law, not to fight, but to cleanly delineate boundaries. The greatest transformation, however, was internal. The Emily who needed Claire's nod of approval or Richard's tacit acceptance was gone incinerated in the museum spotlight. I opened my own design studio times, the Foundation Atelier **. I didn't hide my past. I leveraged it. My new brand message wasn't about luxury. It was about authenticity, structural integrity, and building spaces that reflected the inhabitants' true strength. My first major commission came from a female CEO in Bellevue who had watched the gala footage with rapt admiration. "Your presentation," she told me during our initial meeting, "was the most honest thing I've seen in Seattle high society in 20 years. You showed everyone what happens when you build on a lie. I want you to build my home on the truth." I became a beacon for other women designers, entrepreneurs, mothers who felt suffocated by expectations. My story, simplified and polished for public consumption, became my narrative of empowerment times. The moment you stop seeking permission to exist is the moment you start creating. **. Nathan and I were navigating a careful, scheduled co-parenting existence. He came to therapy sessions mostly silent, dutifully following the therapist's instructions. The wounds were too deep, the betrayal too profound for quick fixes. I loved the man he times, should times have been, but I couldn't live with the man he times, was times in that crucial moment. I told him I needed time, years maybe, before I could consider reconciliation, and he understood that this was a mercy, not a threat. Lily, unaware of the chaos that purchased her existence, thrived. She was all sunshine and curiosity, inheriting her father's easy smile, and thankfully, my stubborn insistence on knowing the truth. One late autumn evening, the Seattle fog rolled in thick and heavy, muffling the city sounds. I was working late at the atelier sketching initial concepts for a new library installation, the smell of fresh lumber and graphite filling the air. My phone buzzed on the drafting table. It was an unfamiliar number, but the area code confirmed it was local. Asterisk, asterisk, Claire Sterling, asterisk, 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 Emily. I know this is unbelievable. I need 5 minutes of your time. I'm downstairs, asterisk. My breath hitched. The old Emily, the one who feared confrontation, who craved family inclusion, would have panicked wondering if this was a new trap. But the new Emily just leaned back in her chair, looking out the window at the obscured city lights. She felt nothing towards Claire, but a profound, quiet pity. Claire was the one trapped forever, branded by her own malice, forever exiled from the world she tried so hard to dominate. I picked up my phone. My fingers moved without hesitation over the keyboard. Asterisk, asterisk. Emily Hayes. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I'm working. Asterisk. A minute later, a frantic reply. Asterisk, asterisk, Claire Sterling. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Please, Emily, I'm begging you. I've lost everything. I need to apologize. I was sick. I was jealous. I didn't mean asterisk. I stared at the screen. For a second, the raw vulnerability in her desperate typing almost cracked my resolve. I remembered the way she looked when the messages appeared on the screen, that flash of pure terror. Then I remembered Nathan's laughter. My final response was short-delivered with the same surgical precision I used to remove toxic elements from a design layout. Asterisk, asterisk. Emily Hayes, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I forgive you, Claire. I truly do. But forgiveness is an act of peace for myself, not an invitation for you back into my life. Asterisk. I did not wait for her reply. I pressed delete conversation. The chat vanished from my screen, leaving only the clean, empty interface. I stood up, stretching my arms high above my head. The adrenaline of the confrontation was long gone, replaced by a deep, settled calm. I walked to the large picture window overlooking Capitol Hill. Lily was staying with my mom tonight, but I pictured her perfectly running across the lawn, chasing butterflies, secure in the knowledge that the adults in her life respected the truth. The sunset, fighting its way through the coastal cloud cover, managed to cast a brilliant, defiant slash of gold and rose across the horizon. I watched the light paint the city. It wasn't the cold, polished view of the Sterling estate. It was messy, vibrant, and earned. I had taken the raw materials of betrayal and spite and used them to build something unbreakable, my own freedom. I inhaled the scent of ink and possibility, feeling the absolute exhilarating weight of independence. The storm had passed, and I was standing on solid ground, ready to design the next beautiful thing.